Roag Best,
Hello, Tim.
before we talk about the origins of this marvellous museum, can we talk about your own origins and relations to all things Beatle via your mum, your dad and your brother?
Yeah. Well, our mother Mo, she started the Casbah Coffee Club, which was Liverpool's first rock and roll club. She was inspired to do that having watched a programme called the 6-5 Special. And she saw the Two Eyes Coffee Bar in London, this vibrant rock and roll scene. The show's talking about different groups that basically had their break from there. Screaming Lord Such and the Savages, Marty Wilde and the Wildcats, Tommy Steele, Tony Sheridan, who later was associated with the Beatles, of course. And she spoke to her then husband, Johnny Best, and asked him, was there anything like that in Liverpool? And he said no. And she said, I want to do that in the cellars of our house. And he said no. And she said, well, I'm doing it anyway. And she did. And from that, of course, she needed a group for the opening night. And the original group that was going to play there was the Les Stewart Quartet, whose second album you may know, Les Stewart and his quartet does it again, is a work of genius. And Mo booked the Les Stewart Quartet to play on the opening night and to be the resident group. They split up 8 weeks beforehand because Les's mum and dad didn't want him to get involved with the Best family. They felt that they'd be a bad influence on him. Where they could have got that idea from is anyone's guess. So I mean, it's never done you any harm. Then again, and of course the Les Stewart Quartet split up. They weren't going to do it, or they split up due to the fact that Les wouldn't do it. Guitarist, singer in the band, Ken Brown, he approached our mother and asked could he and the lead guitarist, who happened to be George Harrison, open the club as a duo. And she said no duo, I want a rock and roll group. And they assured her they had friends that they could form a group with in time. She said, well, she wanted to meet these friends the following day because she was nervous now. And they came back with John Lennon and Paul McCartney, called themselves the Quarrymen, which was the reincarnation of the Quarrymen, John, Paul, George and Ken Brown. And they played the opening night, became the resident group, and from there they met Pete, you know, and they're coming to the house parties and hanging out at Hayman's Green because our mother loved a good house party. You know, anything would be a celebration. You know, the milkman's delivered it early on a Sunday morning. Bit strange having a full-blown party at 7:30 on a Sunday, but you know, needs must. And from the relationship with Pete, coming to the house parties, he's hearing about them being, you know, Long John Silver and whatever it was, and then Johnny and the Moondogs, and then the Silver Beatles. And it was at that point Paul phoned Pete and asked him would he like to join the band because they were going to become professional musicians and head off to Hamburg, Germany, and you know, go as boys and come back as men, as we know, you know. And then it reached a point where they're doing all these local shows in Liverpool, most of them predominantly booked by our mother, who was pushing the Beatles as hard as she could. But they didn't have any transport, and they were doing, it wasn't just them. You hear a lot of the 60s groups, not even just Liverpool based, you know, countrywide, that were having to get to their shows by, you know, humping their equipment onto a bus or getting the friend who had a car to, you know, do a couple of runs backwards and forwards. And then sometimes they were having to leave their equipment behind at venues which could only be described as a bit dodgy, and they weren't sure that their equipment would be there the following morning. So Pete asked a Casbah member, would he like to become their roadie? And he said, I'd love to become the roadie. There's only one problem. I haven't actually got a van. So Pete said, is there any way that you could buy a van? And he said, no, because I haven't got any money. He said, is there any way you can borrow any money off someone? And he said, no one would loan me that sort of money. But lucky enough for this young man, my mum had a soft spot for him. And she said, I'll buy the van for you, and you can pay me back later, which he did. Here I am. That was my dad, Neil Aspinall, and he became the roadie, became the road manager, did the whole journey with them from the beginning right to the end. If there's an end, I don't believe there is an end, but there was an end to them touring, and there was an end to them recording, because there's members of the most popular group in the world now who are no longer with us. And my father became the managing director of Apple Corp, so connected to them on 3 levels.
So when you came along, when did you become aware that these guys were the Beatles, and were you listening to their music, or did you have other tastes?
Listening to their music, because when I went through the record collection, when I got started, there was always rock and roll playing in the house. There was always Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, and there was a lot of Latin music being played as well, and then Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday. It was really eclectic what was being played in the house, but it was fantastic. So I got a sort of a taste for everything. But was the Beatle records there? Yes, there were. Even better than that, when I'm going through the singles looking for a record to play, and at that point, some of the groups I didn't know the group, but it was the record. So if it had a nice record label, you think, oh, I'll put that one on. I'll put that one on. And sometimes it was like, wow. Other times it was, oh, Jesus. But what caught my attention was that there were these black records that were thicker than the other records, and had these white labels in the middle with just handwritten, the Beatles, such and such, 45 RPM, blah blah blah. So I used to play them, not realising that they were all Beatles acetates. So that was nice, and we've still got those acetates. We haven't put any on display yet, but we've still got a lot of Beatle acetates in the collection.
So when did you become aware that your dad's mates were the Beatles?
That was because of other people.
Yeah.
That was because of other people coming over and saying, are you Pete Best's brother? I was like, yeah. He was in the Beatles, wasn't he? And you sort of like that. I'll ask my mum when I get home. It was Pete and the Beatles. Yeah. Were they? Yeah, so, they're the ones your dad works for. Oh, right, yeah.
What was the music like when you were growing up? I mean, what was the scene then? And how did it compare to what you were hearing
for me personally? Well, obviously for me growing up, I remember songs for me that I was like, wow, were not Beatle related songs. They were like, Schools, Alice Cooper. Yeah, I love that.
So that was your generation.
Yeah. So no, that was the Who. I did like that song as well.
Boom boom.
Yeah. And then of course, obviously the punk scene came along. Well, I thought the punk scene was great, and then from that came anyway, some other thing happened from that, didn't it, which was like the Stranglers and bands like that. I thought that was great. And then the new romantic scene came along. Wasn't really keen on that, to be honest with you. So but no, my tastes soul, funk, Motown, Beatles, of course. Again, I think because of everything that was being played in the house, I've grown up having a really very, very varied taste in music. I think it's really easy with music. It doesn't matter what genre. It's either it's really good in that genre or it's really bad, and that's in every genre, isn't it? There's people who do it really well, and there's people that do it really bad, and then you've got that strange mix in the middle who do it bad but they think they do it well. So they're the ones with the huge
was in a band
egos.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes. How long has the idea of a Beatles museum been rolling around inside your head, and was it a rocky road to the opening night?
It was a rocky road, and the idea of the museum really, when did we own 2009 is where the idea of like, hey, let's do a Beatles museum. I had this huge collection, just all in storage. I'm looking at different museums and thinking, wow, what I've got's just a fraction of what I've got's better than that. And so I decided, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a Beatles museum. What I didn't realise was the first obstacle that we'd come across is actually finding a building to put the museum in. I knew I wanted it to be on Matthew Street because obviously that's synonymous with the Beatles and the Cavern Club just down the road and whatnot, and we've got the Grapes next door, their local boozer, and the White Star around the corner, and it's the hub of tourism. And the first building I got gazumped on, and then the second building I got gazumped on, And then the third building, we were literally 3 weeks away from signing on the dotted line, and I thought, wow, you know, that was the only thing left on Matthew Street. And then I got gazumped. This was over a 10-year period, and I lost heart at that point because I thought there's nothing else left on Matthew Street. This dream that I've pursued for 10 years, I'm going to have to put it to bed, otherwise I'm driving myself round the twist, and no one wants to be twisted up inside. You know, so yeah, no, really, you don't want to be twisted up inside. That's a horrible place to be. And then I'm walking across a car park, and Paddy Gannon, who's one of my business partners, saw me and in true Scouse fashion shouted across the car park, "What's wrong with your face?" That doesn't need an answer, Tim, by the way. So it's like, well, I could tell you what's wrong. So I told him, I said, I had this dream, been pursuing it for 10 years. I said, there's no bills. I said, that's it. I said, I don't want to do it anywhere else. So I said, so I'm putting it to bed. And he went, I've just been offered a building on Matthew Street. When? 20 minutes ago. Yeah. So he said, do you want to buy it with me? Can I come in and do it with you? And I said, yes, you certainly can. So we shook on it in a car park. We walked
This
back.
building?
Yeah, we walked back into the city centre. The owner was here, and we did the whole deal on a handshake. His only stipulation was that once I shook his hand, that I could not back out of the deal. And I said, well, since we're doing stipulations and shaking hands, I said, well, I have a stipulation, and that is, if someone approaches you offering you more money than the deal that we've just made, that you basically, hand on your heart, you will stick to that deal. And he did. And he was approached on 5 occasions by people who were prepared to offer him more than what we'd agreed on. And the gentleman that he was, Ken Martin, stuck to his deal. So good on you, Ken. You're a lovely man.
Well done.
It's the building that it was meant to be, really, isn't it? It's perfect. The
Yeah,
location's
yeah.
great. But what makes it so special amongst museums around the world?
I mean, amongst museums around the world, it's one of a kind. It's Liverpool Beatles Museum, the world's most authentic, unique and original Beatles museum. There's nothing like it in the world because people haven't got the items. You know, they just haven't got the items, and there's only 10%, maybe 12% now of the collection in here. A gentleman was asking me before, actually, he said, if there's only 10% of the collection in here, he said, by the time you put the whole collection in, he said, you know, how's it going to fit in? I said, the whole collection can't fit in this building. I said, the building's not big enough. And this is 5 floors of a Victorian warehouse. It's not big enough to house the whole collection. But at some point, when we reach that point, and I've said this to many people, when I walk round, and we're 3 years old now, when I walk round and go, yeah, I think this is done, you know, at that point we'd start revolving things, you know, but I still haven't walked down and gone, I'm finished yet.
So how many exhibits are there? Do you know, have you got the count?
Over 1,000.
And do you have a favourite? If you had to, you know, take one.
I do have a favourite, but my favourite's not in the museum. Yeah, my favourite's
Is it coming?
No, it's the one item that's not coming to the museum. Yeah, really sorry. It's my favourite. It's not coming to the museum.
Can I ask what it is?
Yeah, and because it's it might not be, i.e. every Beatle fan's got different things within the collection that is their favourite, but my favourite, because it's personal to me, when I was a wee lad, our mother would make sure, and she did it to the elder lads as well, and my turn came round, you would have to do an hour of gardening or whatever it was each evening. You'd have to do one day at the weekend, a full day, where you worked all day on the grounds or the garden or this, that and the other. But when I was about 15, 16, she decided that she wanted a cement driveway, and the driveway to Hayman's Green is huge, as Jackie and Tim knows. So she bought me a cement mixer, and over the next 6-7 months I did a concrete driveway at Hayman's Green. All my friends would be dragged in, and then my social circle got smaller and smaller because they realised if they came round to call for me, there was a good chance that they'd end up working on this driveway. So towards the end of it, it was just me, and I used to keep emptying the cement mixer out onto this big square metal thing, and then when we got to the end, and the driveway was solid by this point, and Mo hired a skip, and everything's getting thrown in the skip, and she says, grab the other side of that, son, the thing that I've been mixing the cement on, and that gets thrown on the skip, and it was the Casbah Coffee Club sign, original sign, and I loved it, and I said to her, can I have that? And she said, what do you want the old club sign for? And I said, put it up on my bedroom wall. And she went, well, if you want to take the time and trouble to clean it up, it's yours. So I dragged it out the skip and I cleaned it up, and it was on my bedroom wall for years. That's my favourite item, because obviously the association to the Casbah, the association to the Beatles, but more so the association to my mother, and that thought of being in the driveway and her looking at me just thinking, why, you want this old sign?
And it's up there to this day, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can see it, so the public can see it.
So, well, no, because what happened was, the original Casbah Coffee Club sign was a wooden sign that used to hang across the doorway, and that's here in the Liverpool Beatles Museum, the original one. And then Coca-Cola gave us prestige signs, gave the Casbah and Mo prestige signs. A prestige signs when it has Coca-Cola's name on it and the venue's name. And you only get that if you're moving a lot of their product. And Mo's the biggest outlet for Coca-Cola in the northwest of England. So they were prestige signs. Those signs got taken down 25 years ago because Sotheby's came to Liverpool to do rock and roll valuations, memorabilia valuations, and they based themselves at the Adelphi Hotel. I remember driving past it in the morning, huge line around the Adelphi, and thought, oh, they've got a good turnout. And then I got a call from my brother the next day who said, I was eating my tea, and he said, have you seen tonight's Liverpool Echo? And I said, no. He said, go and get one now. I said, I'm just having me tea. I said, once I've had me tea, I said, I'll go and get one. She said, no, go and get one now. I said, well, I'll have me tea, then I'll go and get, no, go, you really need it. I said, why? He said, just go and get one. I said, well, can't you just tell me? No, just go. This was not Peter, this was my other brother who loves a bit of drama. So I thought, all right, I'll stop eating me tea. I'll go and get the Liverpool Echo. Went to the local corner shop, picked up the Liverpool Echo and went, oh my God, no. And basically it was the guys from Sotheby's on the front page underneath our signs, valuing them at ludicrous amounts of money. So we shot round there, and basically I took a chisel and a drill and a hammer, and we're going to have a terrible time getting these signs off the wall. And I remember put the chisel behind it just to give it some leverage, on the screws to try and unscrew it. And as I put the chisel behind it, went like that, the sign just went, I just fell onto the floor, and so did the other one. So they went to storage. Eventually, there was the whole cement mixing thing that happened before that. And then Mo, the signs you're talking about, Tim, Mo contacted Coca-Cola and said, listen, we've had to take these signs down because of this, and would you give us replicas so we can put the signs back up? And Coca-Cola graciously gave us replicas to go back up on the wall of the house, but the original ones are in storage.
So can you, the Casbah Coffee Club is one of the highlights of Liverpool Beatles tours. Can you tell our younger viewers a little bit more about the Casbah and what they can expect to see there?
Well, for a lot of fans, and still for a lot of fans, they falsely believe that the Cavern Club is the place where it all began. And the Cavern Club isn't the place where it all began. And I'm going to give credit to the Cavern Club here. You weren't the place, or they weren't the place where it all began, but they were most certainly the springboard for the Beatles. They were unbelievable springboard for the Beatles to jump to the next level. So that's how I view the Cavern. Where it all truly began was at the Casbah, because that's where they formed as a group. To quote Paul McCartney, and I've told people this quote so many times that I've got it memorised now, and once when I asked Paul, where do you think the Beatles truly began? And I know his quote verbatim, if that's the correct terminology. And Paul said, I think it's a good idea to let people know about the Casbah, they know about the Cavern, they know about some of those things, but the Casbah was the place where all that started. And, you know, Paul's one of the, you know, if there's bigger members of the Beatles, then Paul's, you know, equally the biggest with John, I'd say, you know, if you're going to have big members, because they were always slightly taller than the other two. And, you know, and it wasn't just a case of the band starting there and playing there. They hung out at the house, they went to the house parties, they stayed over at the house, they slept there. You know, it was more than just a club that they played. It was Beatle headquarters.
Isn't it
And
also true that, sorry Tim,
No.
isn't it also true that your mum got them to that springboard, she got them into the Cavern?
Oh yeah. The what Mo had done, she'd started Casbah Promotions, and she was booking dance halls around the city and putting the Beatles on, and consequently they had the biggest following in the city by that point. And she thought, well, we've done our job promoting them. I don't even think they called it promoting them then. It was just like, I'm helping the lads. They felt that they'd done the job, they had the biggest following, but it was still moving them around the city. And she came up with this idea that if she could find a venue in the city centre, put them there, and if that venue was to give them regular dates, this following that they now had could just come to that venue, and wouldn't that make life easier for everyone? Did a little bit of research, and she decided that venue was the Cavern Club. And Ray McFall, who I spoke to about this, he said first time he ever heard the Beatles, Mrs. Best phoned him, told him about this group she was looking after, huge following. Was he interested in booking them? Which he was, until she told him they were a rock and roll group, and he apologised because the Cavern at that point was a jazz club and he didn't want to book a rock and roll group. He also said that he'd never been spoken to by a woman who was so forthright. He was really taken aback when she said she did actually know that he was a jazz club, and she knew all about his jazz policy. She also knew that he was closed on Sunday nights. Saturday had about 20 people in there, and midweek about 6 or 7. And she was bold enough to say to Ray McFall, and did he mind if she asked him a very personal question? And he said, no, go for it. I think he was in shock. He said, go for it. She said, how are you making any money with those sort of numbers? And he said, I'm not. So you may as well be the first to know, since you've asked. I'm actually closing the Cavern down. And she said to Ray McFall, well, if you're in that predicament that you're actually thinking of closing, then it's time to take a chance, isn't it? So let your chance be the Beatles. Book a rock and roll group, see what they do, and we'll take it from there. And of course, it ended up being 292 times from there, and Ray McFall changed from being a jazz club to a rock and roll club really, really fast. Isn't that strange?
Back to the Casbah, and word on the street is Casbah Hotel. What's that all about?
The Casbah is situated underneath a Victorian mansion, all set in its own grounds, and it's an 18-room house. They're large rooms. You've been there, Tim, and Jackie, of course. They're large rooms, the big high ceilings and all that, and so we decided it was time to do a Beatle-themed hotel. So we're doing 6 Beatle-themed suites. It's going to be the Casbah Hotel Suites. We're hoping to have the work for, we've been at it for about 15, 16 months now, and it's been really, 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 just multiply that a few times. Hard work, really hard work, and but the lights at the end of the tunnel, so we're hoping to complete the work by the end of November and be open for January, and I think people are gonna absolutely love it.
So on top of all that, you're still drumming with your brother Pete?
Yeah, still drumming with my brother Pete. We had 2020, we had the most amazing tour lined up. We were going all over the world to all these lovely places. We were doing America, we were doing Canada, we were doing Japan, Australia, we were going right through Europe. Europe. Yeah, Europe's like just off the west coast of Europe. We were going right through Scandinavia. We were doing the whole shebang. 2020, because 2020 was 60 years of the Beatles, and Pete was there at that time, so it all tied in with regards to promoting, marketing it. The timing was right, and we were just set and ready to go, and COVID hit, and we watched that whole tour. You know when you used to like eat dominoes up as a kid. Well, that was our tour. It went down as quickly as that. So we're thinking, maybe next year we're going to roll back out there. And I'd like to do a new album at that time. I did approach the members of the group, the co-writers, and said, why don't we do a follow-up to Haven's Green, which I got a real shock, actually, because I didn't realise it was 12 years ago when we did that album. So I think it's time for a follow-up. And then basically the co-writers, one said I'm doing my own album, so I can't work on Pete's, and one of the other lads said I'm doing my own album, I can't work because there's four writers including myself. And then the other lad, he said no, we're working on his band before us. One of the tracks had been used as a title track in a programme that had gone huge, so they were going back into studio, so all the writers weren't available, and they're also the players. So that didn't happen, and lockdown would have been the perfect time for us to record, because we weren't doing anything else. I was just having to go out in that wonderful weather each day with cold beers and sit on this really comfy deck chair and sun myself. And then I realised that I wasn't earning any money. That came as a bit of a shock. Thought you better get off this Sunday. Better start moving yourself.
But time for contemplation.
Oh yeah.
I noticed.
Yeah, there
on
was.
Facebook.
Yeah, there was a lot of time for contemplation.
With that in mind, what is the meaning of life in the best household?
The meaning of life in our household. The meaning in our we're big on love. We're big on loyalty, and we're big on trust. And that's and health. The big thing in our house is nothing to do with financial gain of any type, believe it or not. It's all to do with health and happiness. Who do I like hanging out with the most, more than anyone? My friends, of course, because my family drive me absolutely nuts. No, my family, and we're all very, we're not in each other's pockets, but everyone knows that we're there for each other.
All you need is love.
All you need is love. Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. Love
It
is all
is,
you
isn't
need.
it?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What sort of audience are you getting here at the museum?
Well, it's quiet times now for everybody, isn't it? We're still, I know our beautiful UK or England and Britain, whatever you want to call us, we're on our way out of COVID. But for a lot of international travellers, it's still alive and kicking, isn't it? And they're not allowed to travel, and there's still 1,000,001 restrictions. So normally, it's a body of fans from all over the world. It's global who comes through the door of the museum, and I truly believe 2022 we'll be back to global. We'll be seeing all those people from all the corners of the world. At the moment, it's domestic tourism that's hitting the museum, and it's lovely to see them as well. So but it might be nice to see it when it gets back to normal. When someone's asking you something in a foreign tongue, and you've got no idea what to say, and you just smile.
And you make it up.
You just smile.
Yes.
You just smile and point at the toilets.
So aside